Okay, we're going through another 6 records for short reviews this October 4th, and uh, just some variety here. I picked pretty accessible or interesting records. I was going to go with some more experimental records, but I find the more that I cover experimental records, the less people notice and care about what I'm saying. So we'll go with some populist ideas, some more well known bands, and see how that works out with Ural's Psychoverse. This is a thrash metal band and I guess we would say both new school and old school touched band. You know, it's obviously that sort of municipal waste, nuclear assault kind of um, enthusiasm to it. They did start out as more of a crossover band, but Psychoverse feels like a serious record. It feels like that late '80s sort of New Jersey side of things where they're just kind of hitting a different tone. They're not really playing around as much. The end of the record kind of goofs a little bit, but overall, this is maybe just a more serious record from Oral. And if you know their stuff, it's a pretty cool band overall.
Feels the monster I am to say. I've been lost in the shop.
Now, a pastoral dungeon synth record from California-based artist Malfet was actually a pretty cool thing to get in my inbox. I had talked briefly about The Way of to Avalon, their second record, and I'm a huge fan of dungeon synth, but I'm no expert. So, uh, most of the time when I'm sitting with a record like this, I think of a video game soundtrack, and that's what I'm more familiar with. It's something I've pursued since the early '90s, and Dungeon Synth has I'm not sure about what the format should do in terms of telling a story, whether that is the biggest deal or whether the continuous nature of it isn't important or not. In this case, this record tells a story, and it is important that it all relates. So, the first several pieces on here are all very important. There's a martial tone to the drums early on. There's this sparkling voice throughout with the harps and harpsichord and all that as they're emulated, and there's this strong kind of new agey melody to a lot of it that feels appropriately medieval as they're intending, um, and uh, like once they get to the title track, I think that it really hits this really great beat, and it's sort of this cheesy hurrah kind of feeling. And then the last 4 tracks are just these very sleepy, peaceful, gentle ambient pieces that are variously interesting. And I was kind of confused because maybe that's the intent of the album to do that, but it literally began to put me to sleep as those last 4 songs hit. As I was listening to the album on repeat, it was that section that I started to doze off. So very effective in that sense, and I don't know if that's a good thing, but I did like the album. So normally I would write a very extensive piece about October Tide and their latest album. I've been a fan of this band since the late '90s, and the Cancer Pledge still sounds like October Tide, and they've sort of intended to move towards melodic death metal rather than the older style of kind of gothic death doom metal that they'd worked on since the mid '90s. Sort of a shard off of early Catatonia and especially the second album from that band. So what we get here is a continuation of what they had done with In Splendor Below back in 2019. And you might recall that I liked that record quite a bit, and I do like this record as well. But it is kind of more of the same as intended. There are a few great kind of signature pieces from October Tide on here, and then there are some newer, more aggressive pieces. And I feel like they could go a lot harder on the aggressive side of it, as they have in the past, to really function in that melodic death metal space, because a lot of this record is quite mid-paced or slow, and it does leave me feeling like it is still like melodic, but still rooted in a doom metal structure. So there's a lot to like here. It is kind of just more October Tide, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that it does a couple more interesting things in the more stormed up side of the record, but it never really gripped me with that the deep emotional connection that I had with some of their past releases. So it's just yeah, it was just a little bit different. At the Somber Steps to Serenity is the second full-length album from Stockholm, Sweden-based death metal band Exorcist, and they sound like they're from Stockholm. I would say that it's definitely a Boss HM2 pedal-led grind, and you can tell that they like Unleashed. I think they probably like Nirvana 2002, and they like that sort of grinding, but also kind of heavy metal side to the riffcraft from Sweden, and they aren't so much focusing on the punkish side of it so much. So there is kind of this grave uh, brutality to some of their work, and they do whip out the riffs this time. Their last record could barely pull off a solo. They were just so young and fresh into it, but it was kind of a an impressive record how they pulled it all together. And this one does a better job of just putting together a good 40-minute death metal record that is plenty of riffs, not a ton of variety, and for me the guitar tone, it certainly gets old no matter what you do with it. But yeah, this is a cool record. I couldn't say that there was anything that really stood out to me in such a way that I had to go back to it, but I liked that there was, a focus on variety in terms of the riffs, and they were putting a lot of thought into every moment, even if it didn't always pan out in a way that was anything too special for someone who's been listening to this stuff since back in the day. Night Sphere is the latest full-length album from Heritoire, and this is a German post-black metal band, and one that were variously described as post-metal, black gaze, post-black metal, atmospheric black metal. I think that all of those generally apply. They just do all of them at once, and on the last record, they focused intently on more of a post-metal sound, and one that was still inflected with black metal, but they had sort of written it off and tried to move in a new direction. I don't know if they tried to or if they were putting their black metal side behind, but this record kind of fuses all of that together. It takes all of those turns, and within the length of about 12-minute songs, 10 to 12-minute songs, they cover all of that ground in a way that it's interesting. It works. I don't think that it finds a point of real gravity with me in terms of emotional heft or like dramatic scenery, but there is certainly a craft to the way that they're demonstrating those skills for atmospheric music. And I hate to say it, but I kind of found like the black metal elements are vestigial now. They don't really make sense. It's kind of a non-functional aspect of their sound. And I found that when I went back to their EP from earlier this year and some of their previous record, I kind of prefer the Circle where kind of sound where they step away from black metal a bit. So that's just my own thought. Check it out if this is more your kind of thing. Yeah, not really mine. Der Träger und das Fleisch is the latest full-length album from Austria-based death grind band Distaste. And this is a band, I think it could be pretty straightforward to describe some of their albums. They were more leaning towards kind of more of a brutal death metal / classic grindcore sound early on. They've always been kind of compared to Nasum and that sort of finer point of grindcore in the late 90s and early 2000s. But this record, and I haven't listened to their last one. There's sort of a like what I would call neocrust or tragedy kind of style guitar, martyr dod alternately, guitar techniques mixing in with that grindcore and some death metal here too, and they do so using the Boss HM2 sort of chainsaw sound. So it's kind of like melodic death grind at times. There's sort of a punkish crust feeling to it. There's a lot of variety here, and I like that. It all kind of works together. And some of the slower songs are either kind of a crust punk feeling, while as others are more of a death metal, like just a grinding death metal style. So a lot of great variety, pretty solid album. It's over pretty quick and easy to recommend.
Tears